influence. Because we're small, growing our influence is the only way we can be mighty. And so, first off, I'd like to invite Dave Herman, who has a story about Rust and being open. Dave?
Thanks, Nick. Hey. This week we've heard Chris and Mitchell both challenge us to go back to our roots and think about the ways that we do open and be open to trying new ways of working with community and working as an open organization. For the last few years, the Rust team has actually been doing just that. I've learned a lot from them. They've learned a lot from the process of building a project built for community, built by community. The cool thing is this is not just abstract. This isn't just values. For us, community is actually helping the Rust team win. When the Rust project got started at Mozilla, when Mozilla was first interested in it, it was really for a pretty self-serving internal goal. We just wanted to build tools to help our C++ programmers be more productive. But with community, we found that there was value that was far bigger than just that local goal. The community helped the Rust team discover that Rust wasn't just a better C++ for the C++ wizards out there. By eliminating some of the hardest pain points of C++, some of the barriers to entry, it was appealing to JavaScript developers, Ruby developers, Python developers. Programmers were saying, I never dared touch C++, but Rust is the first time I feel like I too could do systems programming. So this was powerful and inspiring to us, but that's also strategic. For us, that means we're not just trying to eat a small piece of the pie that the C++ market has. It means we're building an entirely new market. And it's actually working. So Rust 1.0 came out this year, and we're seeing a tremendous amount of excitement. There were over 1,000 community contributors to the 1.0 release. It's one of the most popular, most followed projects on GitHub. For me, one of the exciting statistics is the over 50 self-assembled organic meetups in 20 countries around the world. That's just something that happened by itself. So the Rust community is excited, but community is not always easy. So I'm going to tell you a little story about the Great Int Debate. Now, I know not everyone in this room is technical. What this debate was about was what to name integers in Rust. So I think even if you're not technical, you can imagine that naming something, that can't be too deep of a question, right? That shouldn't probably be the most difficult technical problem. For the developers in the room, they understand that every developer loves to argue about names. So it started innocently enough in October of 2013 with a bug on file that said, let's rename int to some other names. And the core team was busy. They were writing software. They were trying to ship. They were worried about market windows. They had other fish to fry, bigger fish to fry. So they would periodically check in and try to help the discussion along, and time passed and people argued. This went on for months. Eventually it got to the point where the core team felt like something has to happen. We need to help resolve this. So they got together, they met, they discussed it, they tried to come up with some good rationale, and they carefully wrote a write-up that they thought, this is a solid case, everyone's going to get this, we can finally put this to rest and move on. They posted this on the Rust discourse in December of 2014. So 439 days and 71 comments later, they're finally able to put this to bed. Naturally, this is when all hell broke loose. I am really disappointed to hear the core team made a wrong decision of leaving int and uint as they are. It's a huge mistake that can't be fixed in the future. Even potato would be a better name than int. That's how they spelled it. But then they started to take a darker turn. The vast majority of the community agrees. How much discussion is going on behind closed doors? There was real dissatisfaction going on, and while it sounds like people were asking questions about integers, they were really asking a deeper question. So why wasn't I consulted is a question that I first encountered as the tagline of a blog post by a blogger named Paul Ford in 2011. And he described this as the fundamental question of the web. He said, the web is fundamentally about communities, and communities are about participation and about being heard. And when people start feeling like they're not being heard, that becomes the source of almost all conflict we ever see in open source. This has become so explanatory for us that the core team has used it as a shorthand for explaining what's going on in community from day to day. So at this point, the team was at a crossroads. They could go in one of two directions. They could say, we have stuff to do. We can't afford to drag every single member of the community along every single decision. They're going to have to learn to start accepting our decisions, and we're going to have to just start making them faster. Or we could try to actually deal with this and figure out what's going wrong. And to their great credit, they took the harder road. They did a scary and courageous thing. They worked through this issue with the community, not solely on the technical level, not just discussing integers. They actually discussed what's going wrong here, what's not working, how can we work more effectively together as a community. And in that discussion, they synthesized a new rule that they realized that they had been violating. And Aaron Turon of the core team called this the no new rationale rule. What this rule says is, once it comes time to hand down a decision, if you make that decision based on rationale that hasn't yet been discussed, you're going to have a bad time. This rule actually helped the team to understand their role in the community so much better. Why wasn't I consulted means that everybody needs their opportunity to be heard. Every piece that goes into a decision needs to be something that's been publicly discussed. But as we saw in the Great Int Debate that went on for over a year, if there isn't leadership there to help provide alignment, to help actually move towards a common decision, it's never going to go anywhere. So, armed with this knowledge, the core team did the unimaginable. They took the Great Int Debate that had raged on for over a year, and they started it all over again. So now, you're probably wondering how Rust ever shipped any software. The thing is, with lack of engagement, without community leadership, without an understanding of what makes communities tick, it took 439 days. But the second round, by being present, by actually listening to the emerging consensus, helping articulate it back to the community and discover the shared values, they actually managed to bring this whole conversation to a close in less than a week. Yeah. And I should mention, the outcome was better. For the technical people, the answer is size instead of int. And you can see that the community was really happy, not just with the outcome, but with comments like this. This was a pretty impressive example of community input and collaboration. Nicely done. And they lived happily ever after. Seriously, what they've learned as a leadership team has really been incredibly powerful, and they've gone on to have many productive, often difficult debates that come to really good outcomes. So Tim Berners-Lee, the inventor of the web, he knew this too. He knew that this wasn't just about values, that this stuff actually works. What he said was, had the technology of the web been proprietary and in my total control, it would probably not have taken off. Well, the web took off, and the good news is Rust is taking off too. So I believe that what the Rust team is doing with community and with leadership is actually a game changer for how open source can work. And my challenge to all of you is to try it too. Thank you very much.